One big joke. It's a fucked up world. Here we are in. I ain't going nowhere.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Reason Reborn. I'm here with my co-host, creeped out by the eerie voice that is now a part of Zoom. Cardiac, how are you, sir?
Feeling all natural. For those of you guys who don't get that, I had quite the trouble with my filters just now, and I was looking far prettier than I usually do, but I want to be honest, so here I am.
It would have been like one of the, androgynous looks from the 80s.
I'm not the man to bring it back.
You could have been the trendsetter. Just saying. I mean,
I'm the guy who just sits around in my superhero shirt. It's too late for me to be a trendsetter.
I mean, it's never too late. All right, so we're going to try to make this quick. This has been a delayed recording because, I know, because we talk too much. We talk way too much. This has been a pretty delayed recording because I've been up to my ears in stuff. But the world hasn't stopped moving and crazy hasn't stopped happening, of course. There's a lot of crazy things going on. What should we tackle first? Should we tackle the crazy going-ons or the crazy person? People. You're muted. Hey, it actually tells me when you're muted now. That's awesome.
Well, this is the fun of equipment here. My mic has its own mute button, and this app, of course, has a mute button. So usually I click the mics when I just got confused because I'm an idiot.
Uh-huh.
So the moral of the story is give Cardiac as few buttons as possible. But I was just saying crazy people cause crazy goings on. So I'm fine to deal with let's deal with Marjorie Taylor-Greene first.
All right. So Marjorie Taylor-Greene, psycho at large, is continually at it, stalking AOC and making a plethora of wild comments about any and everything, as she is wont to do. I wanted to talk about her because she is rapidly becoming worse than what Sarah Palin was to the whole Tea Party movement. She's not just becoming the identity of the Republican Party, but she is becoming the standard. And there's a difference because, like, with Sarah Palin and the Tea Party thing, they caused this whole ripple, this whole wave of like people intruding on the original GOP and kind of like bending like people in the party towards their way of thinking. I think with Marjorie Taylor-Greene and the rest of the Trump supporters, anybody who has this huge QAnon Trump / thing going on, I think this is more of a true conversion, or maybe it's not a true conversion. Maybe it's just a coming out party for the Republican Party and them showing their true colors. Maybe. I know some people think that. I think that personally, because I've always thought the Republican Party was fucking batshit insane. Anyway, but I don't know. It just feels like it's not a new brand, but just a total death and rebirth, so to speak.
Back when we had the insurrection, I say it like it was like 50 years ago or something. It was a couple months ago.
Right.
But around that time, I'm sure everybody was a bit taken aback and wondering like, how did we get here? Blah, blah, blah. And I said something along the lines of, especially because some of those Republican leaders had their negative reactions toward the insurrection acting holier than thou. And I'm like, you guys got to cause this because you've been training your base to be dicks for decades now, to be obstructionists, to be conspiracy thinkers. That's why you look at, like climate change denial as one example. I want to include anti-vaccination because that's weirdly a both left and right issue for some reason. But like they trade their base to just not listen to authority, not listen to truth, not listen to experience. They're just constantly. I mean, that's why they voted for Trump. Trump was the guy that pissed off the libtards. They loved that shit about him. So when they had the insurrection and people were acting all surprised, so I said something like, you guys have been feeding your base red meat for decades, and now you're suddenly surprised that they only like to eat red meat. And I think the real issue there is more profound than I meant at the time, because you've been training your base to be like this for decades, and now some of them are climbing into the ranks of your political party, into positions of power. You've tainted whole generations with this kind of bullshit ideology, and now they're coming in with the bullshit you gave them, and they're taking over. This is a problem you've sown for decades, and it's finally biting you in the ass, I guess.
Yeah, and see, here's the thing. I personally think that it's gone further, because again, it's always been a conservative tactic to twist and bend words. But I feel like now it's gotten to a deeper, darker point. In my opinion, because it just seems like when I listen to people, like, have you heard about the NXT ref?
Yeah, he was like anti-vax or something, because he was
No, he's not
masks.
anti-vax. He's
Masks.
a true believer of the QAnon and the Trump stuff. He's not just
the thing I heard from him was at least the thing that stood out to me was he was going to get some masks or something and claiming that they would aid in child trafficking, I believe was his argument. That is one of the things. He went on quite the tirade, actually, now that I think about it.
What he's been doing is he has been going to town halls and giving these speeches. I need to find the video for you to listen to later, but his claims are wild. It's not just like the mass invite child predators and we need to stop wearing masks because masks leave our children victims to pedophiles. That was one of his claims. He also says masks take away your identity as a person. Masks also makes it so that we don't understand what we are saying to each other or how we're communicating. Because without masks, how are we supposed to know how you feel or what your thought, what your reaction is if you don't say anything? Because you can hide all of your expressions under masks. He also believes that it's against God to wear the mask too. He believes that it's a conspiracy from liberals to keep us repressed, and that they're keeping us from our God-given rights by doing things like this and other things, and that Donald Trump is the rightful president, and he praises him as if he was Jesus Christ. If you've ever heard him speak, this isn't just a guy who just has a thing. Anti-vaxxers are one thing. Anti-vaxxers just don't, for some reason, bought into a conspiracy that all of these vaccines do more damage than harm, or they're designed to do something nefarious, like the whole I'm not getting my, COVID vax because they're just trying to chip me bullshit. No, this guy is just full on 100% certified fucking nuts, but nuts in the way that a lot of people now are when it comes to their politics because of Donald Trump. Like, and this is what I mean by like the death and the rebirth of something new, because yeah, Republicans have always found ways to try to come out with like, oh, they're just trying to keep your rights and shit from you and all that. This is something totally different than what I grew up with. I was like, this ain't Newt Gingrich. This ain't even fucking Mitch McConnell. This is something more scary than I've ever thought about, because going back to Marjorie Taylor-Greene, it's like you see video of this lady she's actually recording herself sitting at another constituent's door, screaming and threatening her and like encouraging, like, what do? You're hiding? You're afraid? What, you won't come out? Like, full on harassing someone like it's an okay behavior.
Yeah, it is different. I guess I just meant you can kind of see the trajectory as to how we get here, because some of the fundamental tendencies are what underlie some of this behavior. So, again, just the general trolling, for example, just this idea of you're going to stick it to liberals is something that kind of came up, at least, well, maybe with Gingrich or maybe around that time, but carried on through people like I was going to say Bachman, but I mean, what's her name again? the running mate that you mentioned last time.
Oh, Sarah Palin.
Yeah, Sarah Palin. You kind of saw like that fundamental attitude of, we're the Republican Party, fuck the liberals. Yeah. Carry on to this sort of level where now the entire enterprise is essentially fuck the liberals. Because I mentioned before, like, even when I was younger, like a kid / teenager growing up, Republicans always kind of ran their mouth about a certain, number of key issues, religion, which you're starting to see creep up a bit again with these abortion issues that are coming back. Essentially religious freedom, financial conservatism, basic Reaganomic bullshit. And every once in a while, just sucking the military's dick, basic Republican shit. And then this idea of like, fuck the liberals was there, but it was just like one of the four pillars I just mentioned, military, God, money, and fuck liberals. But now the other three just kind of fall away and it's just that one. So I think they've instilled like the foundation for this underneath that next generation, and now they're standing up on just that. So I look at Marjorie Taylor. I mean, take a step back further. You look at Trump, like he was able to be elected by these people because they've been primed to elect that kind of person. And then he in turn helped prime that base / next generation to be able to elect people like Marjorie Taylor-Greene. It's a positive feedback loop of madness where whoever's kind of in the political power, at least on the Republican side, will kind of feed bad tendencies to their base. People who are part of that base growing up will come into the party with those bad tendencies, so they're worse than the previous generation, and they just keep feeding it back down the pot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but this is the thing, and I think Trump is kind of like the biggest catalyst. But again, hate to say it, but I guess blame Obama, kinda, because that said it. Do. But that said it too. It's where, like with Mitch McConnell, it was more about if we let them like do things to where they actually like are shown to be effective, it's going to be a problem. It's more leaning towards we can't let these people get away with this. We can't let these people control us. We can't let these people tell us what our lives are with a lot of the people like the Margaret Taylor. Like, it's the base level people who the Mitch McConnells manipulate starting to get in charge.
Right. Yeah, I was about to say, like, I think of the McConnell and maybe even Gingrich
Yeah, like those are the smart people.
clan
Right.
of people who kind of are cynically employing certain, ideologies to manipulate
Yeah.
groups, and the people they manipulated who actually believe it now are a little different.
Right. That's why you're getting the Gates and the like Margaret Taylor Greens and the Boberts in there. Because now these are the people being elected because they saw a crazy person who has no fucking clue what he's doing politically, but has all the like fucking rage and the stupidity and the ignorance that they do. Trump gets in. Now everybody who's just as fucked up as he is think they can get in. And the people who are fucked up are pushing for the fucked up people even more because they want to see more fucked up people like them. So it's gone beyond like just being this whole like, wink and a nod thing that you had with the McConnells and the Gingrich. Like, yeah, we really do support you guys. Sure. Like the fucking Agatha wink, basically, is what they've been doing. Like now it's gone beyond that because like we got a taste of it with the Tea Party, and that kind of quieted it down because they were actually trying to pretend like they were trying to do something, and when they failed, people ignored them. Now nobody's fucking pretending like they care about doing anything, or the like on that side of things. They just want to get in there and they want to make sure that nothing that the liberals want happen, and that if possible, they can restore things back to like pre-Civil War days, probably. Up muted.
Sorry, when people, certain parts of the Republican Party go after things like abortion, I feel like that's the old guard of the Republican Party who actually does work, still trying to like, fuck with the laws. Because I don't imagine people like Marjorie Taylor Greene really trying to enact anything serious. Maybe for the sake of, political popularity or, making it look like she's sticking it to the libs, she might pass some sort of, or be part of passing some sort of anti-transgender bill because, the Republican right loves to be about only straight cisgender people. But a lot of them, I look at them, I just don't get the sense they really care about policy per se beyond how it looks. Whereas their predecessors really do care. That's why you have McConnell playing the long game.
No, he doesn't know. I think you got it backwards. McConnell and them don't give a fuck about policy. Let's be serious. If
I think they care about power, I guess was the right word.
If abortion was put in the fucking Constitution as an amendment, they're not going to try to get rid of it. I'm pretty sure a lot of them use that shit. Like the McConnells and things of the world do that shit for show because it gets them the power that they want. They're selfish people who like being in control, and they'll do whatever they need to do to keep that power, which is if my base say they want us to do this, fuck it, we'll do it. And if we don't get it done, we'll just blame the other side. They're going to be stupid enough to still vote for us anyway. Fuck it. Have to say, like, look how the like 180 went with the fucking like relief plan that passed. None of them voted for it because they needed to keep face. But once that shit was passed, just like today, I literally just saw Mitch McConnell put out a tweet. We just secured money for the state of Kentucky to give to businesses by using the like fucking whatever the CARES plan and shit like that. And it's just like, you're touting this as you did this shit, even though you voted against it. Why? Because all you care about is playing the like visual. The problem I think now is, again, with the Marjorie Taylor Greene is you now have actual true believers getting into the mix.
I guess I may have been misleading when I used the word policy. I think they only care about policy to the extent that it helps secure power. So, for example, with that kind of thing, it doesn't really matter that you even pass certain things that they like. You just have to look like you're fighting for it. That's why I think that's why the relief package thing is kind of the perfect thing for them, because they can look to their base like they fought against it and then try to take credit for it at the same time. Because, like I said, the policy thing doesn't matter per se. There's just there's a few aspects to their power. One is just sort of cultural and political, where if they keep their base hot enough and angry enough, they're keeping a certain number of people passionate enough to keep talking about them, voting for them, supporting them. That's fine. On the other hand, when I talk about the old guard like McConnell, there is more actual power, like when you stack the courts in your favor, that those kind of people will go after. So maybe it wasn't correct to say they care about policy per se beyond whatever power it allows them to maintain. I mean, you could argue that like the way they're going after these voting rights situations there is a matter of policy because they believe it will help them maintain some power in certain regions.
Yeah.
Whereas, I guess what my ultimate point there was, when I look at a Marjorie Taylor-Greene, I don't see her really going down those same kind of like long game avenues. Like she wouldn't be the kind of person like a McConnell to be really focused on like stacking the courts and doing this and that.
No, she doesn't have.
They're not thinkers.
No, they're not. They're not smart long game, but I do think they have long game agenda, which is warped. Like again, I think it's let's return back to the good old days type thing. It's a different type of. It's crazy as opposed to calculated.
Because you hear this joke in coverage now about her, especially after she goes after AOC, where well she's not on a committee anymore, so I guess she has all the time in the world. And I'm like, you guys keep saying that like it's a joke, but isn't that kind of what she wants? Like she's, to the extent that she's like Trump didn't want to do anything per se. He just wanted to be president and enjoy the power that comes with that. That's why he, even after he won, he was still doing fucking rallies all the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene is much the same way. Like, I don't think she cares per se about doing a job so much as being a sort of right-wing celebrity. That's why she's, has her phone up in front of AOC's office taking that video, because she wants to share that on social media with her fucking base. That's going to give her whatever adulation she needs.
I slightly disagree because I think she's being effective. Because I think I don't think that she doesn't like just want to be a celebrity. I think she's doing good. It's kind of like the content creator thing. Content creators always think that they have the biggest influence on everything. Let's be honest. Let's take video game YouTubers and shit like that, or Twitch people. Everybody, like a lot of people who do Twitch or YouTube, you'll hear like some of the biggest ones be like, they need to listen to us. We're the ones who plan the game. We made the game popular. Why don't they do what we say that they should do in the game type of thing? I think that's her mentality with it. I think being that she gained a lot of her popularity, of course, via social media. I think she has that mentality. So it behooves her to do that because that's how she got to where she is. That's where she got her base of power at.
I guess, given that we are in the age of social media, that could just be a growing sentiment for people in general. Like, I do hear people talk about that like it's a normal thing.
Look at where her and Matt Gaetz have been.
Was it? Like, I remember some wrestler in a promo or something. Or maybe it was like a real interview. They were talking about how they're the best because they have the most followers on Twitter, and I was like, of all the variables you could mention, your in-ring skills, your skill on the mic, whatever, the thing that you pointed out as your saving grace is the fact that you have the most social media follows.
But no, look at what her and Matt Gaetz are doing.
I do think connection with social media is a growing issue, and maybe not one that affected older people like Gingrich or McConnell, because Trump was much the same way, and not just with Twitter, but with I mean, he was always talking about how great his ratings were, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was a huge driving force for him to talk about his ratings on his show, how, you know, him being around helped boost all the news outlets and their popularity. Like, I don't know, they have a very warped sense of priority that I can't quite wrap my hands around. It has nothing to do with actually doing work. I know that much.
But no, I don't know if you heard me when I was mentioning the Matt Gaetz and her tour.
Did I cut out here? Hold on.
You might have, because I think I cut out too. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you if you're talking, but I was just going to say that...
You said you can't hear me?
You know, Marjorie Taylor-Greene aside, I think it's also showing that Washington in general is kind of devolving. You see that video of her outside harassing AOC, and I don't want that kind of thing to become normal. Hold on, it might be my side. Yep.
Can you hear me now? I think it's my side.
Sorry, it looks like Zoom kicked off my headset first.
See, this is what happens, people, with these products. The technical difficulties are just ridiculous. Zoom, what did you do? You put creepy voices in our ears. Now you're fucking putting like his sound off. It's outrageous. Totally outrageous. You're ruining this podcast. I guess you get what you pay for, though, considering this is free. By the way, if I haven't said it enough, thank you to any and everybody who watches, listens. We definitely do appreciate you guys coming through and listening to our madness as we talk about things. You know. Oh man. Also, while I have to vamp, need to come up with some with a more permanent schedule for recording and pick up some more recording spots on this channel. I have not done any of the quick VODs where I do news lately because of everything that's been going on. Just trying to figure out some financial things. There's a lot going on the financial end. It is like incredibly insane. I'm trying to get some stuff together so I can like advance a lot of our product. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, you can hear me now.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was like, is he ignoring me? Like, I don't know what's going on.
I just gave it. Sorry. I thought it was you at first, so I didn't.
I did too. So I was like fucking with my microphone, like, I'm muted. What did I do?
I looked at the Zoom settings and it like disconnected my headphones for whatever
Zoom
reason.
doesn't like you.
Most people don't. So,
rightfully so, but I feel like Zoom needs to not do that.
Well, I'm black, so what are you gonna do?
What? Yeah.
I guess you heard what I was saying.
Yeah, I heard what you're saying. You know, and I was trying to say, like, well, when you were bringing that up, I was like, it was about the social media thing. I was like, well, look at what her and Matt Gaetz were doing with that tour thing, where they're just like going on this tour, promoting like their views. It's a total like, look at me, plus it reinforces their influence. Or again, you mentioned Trump too, and how he does all his things. Part of it is like to reinforce, like, yeah, I am popular and I am influential, and what I say, people listen to, so I can really do something and change things. Again, it's the whole social media YouTube effect. Because I have like 1 million subscribers, clearly I move the needle.
Yeah. It is a value set that is new with the advent of social media. And I guess the point I was trying to end off on there was just that while I understand that at the moment Marjorie Taylor Greene is, I won't say unique, but like her level of energy isn't quite common yet. I don't want that to like proliferate, because as people have mentioned, the notion of her, supposedly a professional in Washington, essentially stalking one of her colleagues is not normal, and we shouldn't want that to become normal. I feel like that the fact that she does that kind of thing, because this isn't new with her, doesn't get enough attention, and it doesn't get enough scorn, particularly from the Republican base. Like, your standards are so low that you won't even have somebody who acts like a professional. If you went to your job and behaved that way with your coworkers, you would expect to be fired. And you wouldn't tolerate it from anybody else. Even if you don't like a person, you'll just go off and start harassing them and stalking them.
And see, that's the thing. It's the same thing I say to people. This is why I'm a horrible content creator, by the way, guys. It's why I should never make it on Twitch or YouTube. But I say it all the time. It's like, you're big in your world and amongst your group. But at the end of the day, most companies, most businesses, the government isn't, or at least they shouldn't, go by the whim of somebody who actually doesn't understand how the shit works. Like, the last thing I want ever again is another Donald Trump. I didn't like when people were saying like Oprah should run. I was fucking screaming for the rooftop. No, I don't want somebody like. It's nice that you have empathy and compassion and interest, but it takes more than that to run a country. Even on the positive side of things.
I think it was back during Brexit. Maybe it was Richard Dawkins who said this, but they were pointing out this sort of disdain people have for experts, and, saying they're elitist and all this shit. And he made the point that, if you were going in for like a heart surgery, you would want an expert in medicine. You would want an elite doctor to do your surgery. You wouldn't want some random motherfucker who's never done medicine to do it. If you want somebody to fix your car, you want an elite, mechanic. You want somebody, if you want to get a tattoo, you don't want a 4-year-old to do it. You want an elite tattoo artist, right? It's funny, it seems like government is the only place where we just don't expect expertise and knowledge, or even actively don't want it sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's.
And again, that's on both sides, because you brought up fucking Oprah. That's not somebody the Republican right is clamoring for. That's on the left.
Yeah, no.
I'm not gonna say she's
or like The Rock talking about he
right.
can run for president. What the fuck? Shut the fuck up. No, people like we've taken off a lid to a jar we didn't want to. We've opened a Pandora's box politically.
I just had a friend just the other day ask me, about Michelle Obama, if she should run, could she run? What would be her chances? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, she doesn't even like politics. Like, the only reason that this even comes up ever is because people like her, not because she likes the idea of that job.
Yeah. And she understands, just because I'm popular don't mean that I should be considered an expert to do this. Like, no.
And even then, she's probably still legit. Even if largely from proximity and experience, she's more qualified than the other people we just mentioned. And even still, I wouldn't say like we should do that.
Like again, Twitch player who thinks they know what would make a game work. Tell me how you're going to code this process in order to make it work the way that you say it's going to. You can't. Oh, that's right. You don't know how to code. So why the fuck are you telling me what would be best at the how to do my fucking job? Same thing with politics. Like I can come up with ideas and all that, but unless I know enough to know how to get that shit passed, how to present it, how to write it up as a bill, how to like, whip it through and all that, I can have all the fucking ideas I want.
Sure. It's not bad to have them, but yeah, actually executing is different because
exactly.
Even when like in college as a software engineer, I remember like people in the business school would just like pitch these random app ideas to me or some dumb idea for a website. And they seem to be under the impression it would just be very easy to do. If you give them a timeline, they're kind of shocked. Or, if you want to talk about money, it's like, bruh, how do you think the internet works? Like you have to host your website somewhere, got to deal with the UI. Are you dealing with money? Then we got to talk about, how we're going to secure transactions because you can't just have them fucking unsecured money flowing around. That's a problem. Maybe even illegal in some cases. Are you going to have user accounts? Then we got to store all that data in the database, talk about privacy concerns. Like general ideas are fine, but if you actually try to implement things in real life, you will come across many problems. And that's not to say that you cannot, shoot for solutions, but there's real world situations that people aren't really ready to deal with.
It's not only whether you can shoot for solutions. Are you willing to go through the work to find those solutions? Because most people who can come up with every fucking idea, again, especially with politics, people are like, well, all you got to do is just raise it to this. Like, you raise it like, oh, fucking free college is the best thing. Or like the whole tax the rich thing. It's like, if you elect Bernie Sanders, he's going to make he's going to take down Wall Street. Okay, how is he going to take down Wall Street? By making them do what they're supposed to do. How is he supposed to make them do what they're supposed to do? By taking it to them and being like, you're not giving me a fucking answer because you don't have an answer. So why do you keep saying this? Why are you so sure that this happened? How is this going to work? Has he said how it's going to work? No, you need to do more than just say you're going to do something.
And even things that I want to see happen, and maybe we can talk a bit more about this when we talk about the CDC mandates later, but I've said after this pandemic, it's like we need to really, we should have already done this, but we need to really have a better sense of preparedness for pandemics because we already know pandemics can occur. They have occurred through history. We know how evolution and cell mutation and all that, or virus adaptation works. So just as a small example, because I remember when they were talking about vaccine rollout, one of the challenges was, well, it's in some neighborhoods, they don't have a pharmacy or whatever nearby. And I was like, that's fucking stupid. That is a serious infrastructure flaw that there's significant, numbers of people who can't access necessary medicine. We need to plan that out. I think, and again, this is me also admitting that I don't know the full implementation strategy required, but I imagine smaller scale distribution in different areas across the country, so you don't have to produce them in just a small number of locations. But my point is there's a lot to think about logistics wise to even small things that I would like to see done. And even
the funny thing is we were kind of moving towards that stuff before Trump came to. It's just the whole gas shortage thing that just happened. For those who don't know, there was a quote unquote gas shortage that caused people to panic and empty out gas stations across the East Coast that ended Friday, which wow, that was a huge shortage. Tuesday, they said that they fixed the thing and that it'll be a couple of days before we get the pipelines, like, gas to your stations. People panicked and emptied out gas stations by Thursday. Then Friday, all the gas stations were filled again. God, y'all dumb. This is why gas is high as hell, by the way. If you're wondering why gas is high as hell, blame us on the East Coast because we're stupid. Anyway, but like that's a cyber attack thing that was being worked on. Like that the Obama administration was introducing the idea of like shoring up cyber attack thing. And it's like stuff like that, the ball got dropped during the Trump administration. Same thing with the response to a pandemic. They had started like a response, like, team thing to try to like figure out after H1N1. They were like developing that, and Trump's just like, whatever, we don't need this shit. And it's just like,
fair enough. I guess, but even then, though, my point was just,
no,
even if you identify that as a problem and start working toward it, you can't expect it to be solved in 5 minutes. Is all I meant. Because I think sometimes people are like,
I agree, but I'm just saying, like, the problem is like not just coming up with the idea. It's like once you come up with the idea, you have to start doing the work, and you can't stop it. Right. And the problem is a lot of people, when you got people who are willing to like not believe that you need to fix a problem, it makes it even harder.
Well, yeah, then I think people have just bad expectations about how quickly they can be fixed. Or,
well, no, but like again, Trump didn't feel like it needed to be fixed, or that it was big enough to worry about, to be bothered with. And you gotta.
Right. But if you look at, so for example, during the Biden thing, I remember as the vaccine started to come out, they started to point out that, certain areas aren't getting them, that, disadvantaged areas aren't getting them as much. And I was like, yeah, just because we started talking about, the advantages some areas had over other areas, neighborhoods of people of color, maybe not having the same access to these vaccines. We started talking about that publicly pretty recently. I don't know why you guys thought we would just be able to fix that in 5 minutes. Like, just because we started talking about that, started talking about, the social justice issues around access, does not mean that hospitals suddenly got built where there weren't any in 2 months, right? Like,
it's wild.
Before we hop too far off the Marjorie Taylor-Greene thing, I just want to say that I think all of that leads into the fact that Miss Cheney has been disappeared. She no longer exists. Nobody's seen her in weeks. I'm kidding. She's alive. And still has her position. Well, not her position in Republican leadership.
No, this actually feeds into the Marjorie Greene. All of this feeds into the Marjorie Greene thing because it's the influence of fucking psychos. Because she's pretty much her career is possibly being derailed because fucking people who support Trump are upset that she talks bad about fucking Trump, their Lord and their Savior. And now she's lost her position as like one of the head top Republicans in the House of Representatives, and she could fucking lose her next election and lose her job and never be elected to office again because of this fucking psychotic influence.
And earlier you were talking about how this moment is different than even when you were growing up, but I think that is one of the key differences, is this sort of worship of a singular figure. Like, I grew up, people talk about whoever the Republican leader is at the time that they like, or they'll suck Reagan's dick, or talk about oh my God, who's that asshole that wrote those fucking papers the conservatives are always going on and on about? It'll come to me in a second. But
I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of his name.
It's like their Bible, essentially, for fiscal conservatism. And for some reason, his name is escaping me. But there's certain names that they've always kind of brought up, but I've never quite seen the religious fixation on a singular dude like this. Yeah. Like, nobody worships McConnell like this. Like, McConnell has power and respect, I guess, within his cohort, but I mean, you can say the same for people like Gingrich, but nobody worships them like this. Nobody's this afraid of them. You know what I mean? Like, I think this is something I can't think of anybody else really who had this sort of cultish following.
Yeah, because again, Tea Party people thought that was crazy, but it still was more based on philosophy and not a philosophy based around a guy and his words, which this is. Like, it's it's just weird. It's wild. And I think and again, because he was able to do so much through social media, it's why you're generating people who are behaving like Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she's going to try to up herself. It's I hate to keep comparing it to the YouTube thing, but it's just like, everybody wants to be PewDiePie now.
I hate how I immediately understood that fucking
Exactly.
I do not appreciate how apt that analogy was.
Yeah. Or they found a trend online that goes now. Everybody wants to be the next big TikTok star. It's just like when Vine was around. People started blowing up on Vine. Everybody got a Vine account. People are blowing up on TikTok. Everybody's trying to do the TikTok thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're following the trend of people who essentially made fortunes by being annoying. But I mean, it is terrifying, right? Because like, if Cheney isn't safe, like Cheney is old money Republican. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
she's Dick Cheney's daughter. He is one of the you were talking about how people bring up certain names. He is one of the names. When you think about conservatism, he is one of their pillars. The daughter of a pillar of the party just got dumped on.
Like it was nothing, too. And
right.
Pretty much over nothing. Like, her big crime
wasn't
saying that we should give out free college and healthcare.
It wasn't even like she was like, fuck conservatism. She just said, this guy lost. She literally was like, he lost and he's done things to make people do stupid shit. And now she's the worst thing. Like they literally, which is, again, this is why it's really scary. Because it's literally just like she walked into a Catholic church and said, fuck Jesus Christ, and spit on a cross.
Yeah, that's all for a Cheney, for what I think she was third most powerful or whatever.
Yeah.
It was pretty much the slightest offense you could possibly imagine. It was slightly above Obama wearing a tan suit. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And she's ousted. It's like, y'all really just going to give power away to Trump, to one dude like this? Like, to me, that was proof positive that he owns your fucking party.
Yeah.
Like, if he had any, obviously he never has any self-doubt because he's a fucking lunatic. But if he ever had a drop of self-doubt, he doesn't have it anymore. He owns y'all.
Yeah, he's gonna get worse.
And there have been smaller instances of this where maybe somebody kind of tries to speak out and he says some wild shit and maybe endorses an opponent that primaries them or something and they lose. But this is fucking insane. Like, he's not even in office anymore. It was one thing when he was like the president. Like, he's literally just an old man dicking around at Mar-a-Lago in Florida.
Yeah.
He has no real political power, and yet he's the most powerful figure in that party. He's threatened, historically, to be like, fuck this, I'm going to make my own party. Like, he doesn't even have any loyalty to your party, and yet he's the most powerful one there.
Nope, he has no. I mean, he goes after like your top people, like they're nothing. Come on, he's loyal to only him and himself. but y'all protect him because y'all are so scared that the people that he's got under his sway won't. But this is what happens, though. It's sad, but this is what happens when your long-term policy of how to conduct yourself is to just go with the flow of whatever's the flavor. It's finally caught up with them, you know.
Yeah, they created a situation they cannot control. And it's not just that they can't, they don't even have the spine to try.
But even if they had the spine, could they? Because again, a Cheney is going to be destroyed politically. Her father destroyed more people's lives than anybody I've ever seen. He shot a guy in the face and still maintained the respect and loyalty of his party. The guy he shot in the face apologized to him.
What a man. They really fucked themselves in this vision. I talked about this when we were talking back about, you know, voting to confirm Biden and all this stuff, and whether they should have the gumption to say, you know, this was an insurrection, blah, 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 on January 6th. It's like there's no advantage to that at all for that, because they're not going to win over Democrats by doing that, and they're just going to look weak in front of Republicans.
It's why McCarthy just recently was like he's opposed to them doing a commission for January 6th.
I mean, and we all talk like how they look like bitches and stuff, and they do, but again, they're, at least in the short term, at least in that immediate scope, politically correct strategically, because there's just no incentive to do the right thing for them. And more to the point, there's no real consequences for them doing the wrong thing too. Because as I've seen news anchors point out, you know, a lot of these people, like Ted Cruz, were part of helping stoke the fires of the insurrection that occurred. They were the ones voting against confirming Biden, and, you know, like, they actively took part in all this nonsense. And what happened? Nothing. They just went to work. They're still working. They're right there. Nothing's happening to them. So they're not suffering any direct consequences for that at the moment, unless some investigation allows for something that they could be charged with. But why should they change?
Yeah.
And that's
At the same time, it's like they're stuck in like a weird position because they can't waver from that position either, because even the slightest step back to something, like just finding something a little too much, it's just like basically, you know, saying maybe this is a little bit too far. Not even saying you don't think that we should do it, but just asking the question, is this too far, is enough to get you out. I think at this point, you can't even, like, you know, have a conversation. You're either in for a pound and for a penny, or you out.
Who was that Republican Obama reference in his book that, like, they were trying to get a deal on healthcare? I think it was.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, and I can't think of his name.
Essentially,
like,
as a reminder for people, they kept trying to, like, come to some sort of agreement. And I think eventually Obama said something to this man in the vein of, is there anything I could do to this bill to get you to vote, you know, yes on it? And he just kind of thought about it for a second, and he said no. And, you know, the calculus there is essentially that you can't really be seen looking like you're willing to work with the other side in front of your base. You know what I mean? Like, there's just no real benefit to that. And it's like the fact that you're even in this position where the idea of working with, you know, your fucking colleagues at your job is not tenable to you is already a problem. It's already like a weak position.
Right. It's not that this is actually something beneficial or not. It's just the fact that the other side, quote unquote, came up with the idea, or not even came up with the idea, just the fact that it would be passed by the other side.
Right. And it's weird because I know that our leaders are supposed to represent us, but they're also supposed to lead us, and you're not leading. Like, you are completely buffeted by the whim of the cycles you've been whipping up for decades.
Yeah.
Like, you can't. They are. I don't know how to say this, because if I say like the people are in control, it'll be like, well, that's the way it's supposed to be. It's like, but a leader should guide, and they're not guiding. They're just these little paper boats being rocked by the ocean.
No, but you can say it in the sense that, yes, people can ask for what they, people have the right to be like, hey, we think this, and the third. But there are certain like basic needs, like the fucking relief thing. The country is in a financial crisis. Why are you fucking trying to keep people broke? Why are you guys going around here like all these slew of Republican governors rejecting federal funding that would give people an extra $300 in unemployment because they think, well, because they're getting the money, they don't want to work? What kind of backwards shit is that? They're not working because they can't get a job. And the jobs that are out there aren't paying enough.
I was gonna say, because somebody mentioned the idea that, if unemployment and that shit is enough to overtake your income, that is probably an indicator that your income is too low.
Right.
So
instead of fixing that problem, they're creating another problem and trying to force people to deal with the current problem instead of like, hey, maybe we need to change things.
This is how far the madness goes, right? Because again, like, it's mostly just about looking as though you're fighting against the other side. And that is so important. Nothing else matters, because a lot of people, even on the right, were fine with the relief package because, they needed fucking relief. And yet they still fought against it because it is literally more important for them to look like they're sticking it to the libtards than to actually help their own constituents.
My state's falling apart and people are starving, but I can't fucking vote for this thing that'll give money to feed my state. I'll just vote against it. And then like McConnell afterwards, like, hey, I got y'all money.
That they're not wrong, are they? Because the people that voted for them are the kind of people that are going to vote for them as long as they look like they're sticking it to liberals. Like, if they actually did, quote unquote, cave in and vote with the Democrats to pass that thing, even though the constituents probably would have liked it, they also probably would have had some disdain for the Republican who did it, which sounds idiotic because it is, but I genuinely think a lot of people would have that sort of tact where like they would appreciate the benefits. Well, one or two things would happen, I guess. Either they would appreciate the benefits and shit on the Republican leader for siding with the libtards, or they would appreciate the benefits and then act like their leader has always been like this good person that gives to you. Like, I don't know. There's no ideological stability with these motherfuckers. It's just really hard to like wrap your mind around them.
No, you can't. It's impossible. Damn near impossible.
Which I think Trump was a great illustration of, because during, the election where in 2016, people would show this footage of him like saying one thing and then saying literally the opposite, like the same day, maybe a few hours later. And it's like, well, you guys are of the false impression that ideas actually fucking matter. They don't. The only thing kind of weird to you guys about him is that he's just kind of more direct about the fact that ideas don't matter. Yeah. He doesn't feel the need to even pretend that they matter. That's why he can say, 1 second, everybody, hell, fucking give babies a gun, whatever, and then say, I think we should take the guns first, ask questions later. Like, everything's totally irrelevant.
Again, comparing it to YouTube, it's the fucking, I agree with this first, and then I say this now because this is what's going to be the thing. It's going to give me the most views.
And I brought this up to you before, but like, I don't know what the correction for this is, because I've always kind of not liked the line people throw out there when the Republican, or excuse me, when a politician is fucking up, you see like, well, they're gonna pay for it, during the next election or whatever when they lose. Like,
Are they? Are they?
I mean, in any normal job, the consequences are whatever they are. Maybe you'll get fined, maybe you'll get fired, whatever. They're at least in theory more immediate and direct consequences, right? Whereas like with politics, for some reason, the consequence is the people will kick you out. What? Like,
But no, I mean, we said this about Trump the whole 4 years. And what happened? He damn near he lost by a landslide in the electoral college because Biden got the states. But look at how close some of these margins were. It's the reason why they're in Arizona now trying to find some reason to overturn that shit. Because he only won by like less than 20,000 votes. Same thing with Georgia and their recounts when they had him. It was like, yeah, he won, but in a state of millions of people, like Georgia, or like high population places like Georgia, he still came close.
Just why he should have dealt with legal. I feel like he still hasn't really had proper legal consequences for anything he's done.
He hasn't had any fucking consequences, but it's just like, or look at the Senate thing. He had to scrap and claw to even out the Senate. Not to win it, to even out the Senate.
Sure. But I mean, even things like paying off Stormy Daniels, like that hasn't fucking, nothing has really happened over that.
No.
And this is why I always say, like, I
nothing's happened over the what was the Lithuania thing where he called the guy, was asking for favors. Nothing's happened. The insurrection, they're fighting not to have anything happen with that. His taxes, nothing.
And I've been like early on in the presidency, I'd said something like, I do kind of want for the opportunity for the American people to like vote him out because, back in the day when I was a little bit more optimistic, I guess, I was like, I wanted us to prove to the world that we wouldn't do that again. You know what I mean? Because I felt like we kind of sent a message globally that we're a bunch of fucking idiots by voting for this guy and putting him in office. And while I wanted him to be like impeached and taken out and shit, I'm like, at the same time, like I feel like we kind of need to prove a point to the world that we're not dumb. And then we almost did it again. So I was wrong.
And not only that, again, we get the Marjorie Taylor-Greenes, the Matt Gaetz. We actually added, like where we got rid of one crazy guy, we added a bunch more.
I mean, he proved that it could work. I mean, He's fine, right? He's enjoying his little time in Florida. Nothing's wrong with him. He's fine. He got to be fucking president for crying out loud. Like
Stan Lane's illegitimate daughter is out here causing chaos.
I guess probably a better example is like somebody like Ted Cruz, because everybody's talking to, a couple months ago was talking about how he flew away while his state was freezing. So fucking what? Like,
he's in trouble for that though. He's in trouble for that though. Again, today he sent out a tweet like saying, "Hey, I hear flights to Cancun are back."
Oh, I'm sure. Well, again, call me when he actually loses over it, because like the consequence.
Yeah, that's why I don't blame him for making that joke, because it's like, what you gonna do? Are you gonna vote him out? No, shut up.
There's a reason McConnell was just like, I'm the fucking Reaper of the Senate, because nobody in Kentucky's gonna do anything about that. And we get, you can always consider
drunk on bourbon anyway. Bourbon and mint juleps.
Gerrymandering and all the structural advantages they have, and that's fine. But people have like a very to the extent that people are paying attention, they have a pretty short political memory. Like they're not angry for that long over something. Plenty of people have already, until that joke, I guess, forgotten that Ted Cruz fled the state while it was fucking freezing over.
Yeah.
So I need proper consequences when people fuck up. I don't know how we get, and even if you have them, like even if you vote them out, at this rate, we're just gonna end up with some psycho in there, some bigger psycho in their place. Like, even if you vote out some of these more traditional Republicans, you're just gonna end up with a Marjorie Taylor Greene taking over.
Yeah, no. So yeah, we're in the suck for a while, people. Just realize that.
And that's why I said, like, I don't know what the correction for this is, because even if I don't believe most of them would actually be knocked out of office, and even if they were, there's something worse waiting in the darkness. So like, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. These people.
Yeah, and now we're in the suck for a while.
Unless
maybe we should adopt Marge Simpson's grandmother's philosophy,
which was,
I don't feel like I should say it because it's fucked up. Look, this isn't my policy. This is just something that was said on The Simpsons as a joke. But they were discussing something like how to fix the problem. And Marge was like, well, maybe just do like my grandmother used to say. Shoot them all and let God sort it out.
FBI, you know where to find them.
That's a joke by The Simpsons. That is not a plan. I do not endorse that as something that you should do, because it's not right. You should not shoot them all and let God sort them out. Shit, that's what these fucking... It's the reason why we have these issues now with all these goddamn shootings.
I was going to say, maybe the solution is that somehow Democrats need to win over a bunch of these people and just start winning super decisively all over. But even then, like, even if that was somehow possible, I think a decent portion of these people would just take that as some kind of conspiracy. That, like, what's up with Democrats winning all the time? This is bullshit. They fucking rigged everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like... It's just all just... Ugh.
If anybody's got the solution, let me know, because I'm just... Even if it's just a theoretical solution, I'd still be curious, because I don't have a fucking answer to that situation.
I know. It's just all dumb. It's just dumb. Dumb. All right, moving on. You mentioned CDC. So there's a new CDC, I guess not necessarily mandate, but CDC announced that if you have been fully vaccinated, that it should be fine for you to walk around without a mask. Which, me personally, I think is a dangerous precedent to be out there, as people already were ignoring the mask mandate, beforehand. Now, what the fuck do you think they're gonna do?
I don't know. I don't have a strong stance on this, because what's a good way to point this out? I was listening to one of the people on the news coverage talk to, I guess she must be the head of the CDC, because she's always talking on their behalf. And she was like fielding some questions people had that they'd sent in. I think one of them was like, so, say I'm in an office, I'm fully vaccinated, but like somebody isn't, and I can't verify if they are or aren't. If, maybe they're lying. What do I do about that? And her point was essentially like, look, you're fully vaccinated, so you're more or less fine. With, the danger is more on that person who's lying than you. And I think I'm kind of warming to that, because, there's vaccinations go out. A lot of people, it's free for everybody. Everybody can get it. People have been getting it. I'm starting to lean toward this idea that I'm not sure I care that much that other people are doing it, even if they're lying, because at this point, they really are mostly putting themselves in danger. I think there's still the danger of, as transmission goes, spread, virus mutations occurring. So you might get new variants. That's still a concern to me. But now that you have the danger and onus issues more on them than just on the general public. And maybe that's kind of a dark thing to say, because I think somebody might hear me say that and be like, so you're saying they could just go fuck themselves and die? But I don't want to say yes, but I'm not necessarily saying no.
Or that people, if you don't get vaccinated, you don't give a fuck if you die or not.
I mean, at some point, like, unless you're gonna like hold them down and stick it into their neck or their arm, like, I don't know how to say this without pretty much saying let them die.
I mean, but here's the thing that makes me think it's problematic. It's the fact that you kind of are going to end up in a situation where you're going to have to go with the honor system. Like, okay, if somebody who does DoorDash, I was actually in a place where they were letting people walk in and out without masks, willy-nilly.
All right.
And that fucking bothered me because it was like, how do you know these people? And like, it's funny because they still had the signs up that said that you have to wear a mask in the store, but they were letting people, which is fucking was like just blowing my mind. Like, what the hell? Why do you even pretend then? Shit.
I mean, I think that's kind of dumb and confusing because the guidance was you don't need them if you're vaccinated anyway. So if you don't care to have that rule anymore, I mean, the CDC is kind of fine with you doing that. You don't have to have the sign; just take it down. But like, I guess that's my point. It's like, yeah, you don't really know who could be lying, and I'm sure there are some people who are going to be lying. But I guess my point was just that, like, does it matter if they're lying or not? Because they're mostly putting themselves at risk by lying. And maybe I'm a bit callous, but I don't think it matters.
I guess. Like,
which, I don't know. It's a weird thing because, yeah, no, I guess I just don't know that the idea is that because we don't have like a vaccine passport to verify who does and doesn't have it. I think unless you're in a situation where
you have your card,
dealing with people.
That's the thing. Are people going to check that card though?
People going to what?
Check the card though, because you have to have the card.
Oh, maybe I'm cynical, but I always thought even if we had such a passport, people are going to fake it or something. Like,
yeah, like I'm sure people are going to like make a fake card because, like, you got your card from your vaccination, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody might just
just a piece of paper, like, let's
exactly.
like really read it.
Like somebody could fucking print one off of the internet and fucking,
Yeah.
You just get on like what's his name, Photoshop, and fucking change their shit.
I mean, yeah, this wouldn't really be that hard to replicate, to be honest. Like, it's just it's not like it has some like government seal made of some special material. It's just a piece of paper with pretty standard fucking stickers. This would be pretty easy to do. But even if it wasn't that, even if it was like digital on your phone or something, like, I could imagine somebody just having a screenshot ready that they manipulated. Like, so I don't know that it would help even if you had it, but I don't know. I'm not as bothered, I guess. Unless maybe you're in a situation, for example, where you're going to be around people who are immunocompromised or have specific health concerns. And I think that would be a good reason for like those kind of establishments to keep their mask mandates and for assholes to fucking honor them. But I don't know that worrying about whether you can verify anybody is lying is worthwhile to even think about.
Yeah.
Now, I guess it's the more general issue for me, though. It's like, socially taking off my mask feels kind of fucking weird. Like, I haven't actually like walked outside without my mask yet.
Yeah, no, I still wear my mask. Like, I'll walk to the car with it off because I know it's just like me in the area. But I notice when I go places, I don't take it off. I might pull it down in the parking lot, but if I see somebody come near, I immediately pull it up. Like,
and this
like
is
that.
a consequence of people being assholes during this whole thing that I hadn't really thought about, because for so long, anybody who was like not wearing the mask was just kind of being an asshole. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
before we had the vaccines and they were rolling out, like anybody you saw doing that was, you know, largely for political reasons, just being like, oh, this isn't the way Jesus intended it. This fucking government is trying to control us. Like they were always these crazy people or these hard right people making up bullshit reasons, like going nuts over wearing a tiny piece of fabric over your face, like it was chains around your neck. And I think that's part of the problem is the optics, because for so long the only people who wouldn't do it were pretty much just being dicks and obstinate for no fucking reason and endangering other people's lives, literally. So now that we're like talking about, you know, people doing it in general, it's like, well, it's just a weird visual. Like I feel like if I take it off, if I saw me, you know, from somebody else's perspective, taking off my mask, I'd feel like, look at that asshole. Like I don't know how to kill that instinct.
Right.
But part of the reason it bugs me too is like, you know, those of us who are trying to be responsible and thoughtful and safe and all that shit and follow that guidance. You're looking at the people who didn't follow the fucking rules the whole time and now don't have to anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just about to say, because as soon as you started saying that, my first thought was, you're rewarding the fucking people who don't behave. Like, they win. Like, they didn't have to follow the rules. They didn't have to behave. And now they get to reap the benefits of all of us who followed the fucking rules and behaved.
I feel like, you know, by the end of the year, maybe early next year, when things are more normal-ish as they seem to be going, they're probably going to be like running their mouths about how, like, oh, look at all you dumb assholes who wore your masks. Fucking sheep bow down to the government because people's memories are short. And you'd be like, what happened? Nothing. We're all still here. And I'm going to be like, well, like over 500,000 people died, but sure, we're all still here.
Almost 1 million now. Like, it's close to 800,000. Like, a lot of people just for you to like act like you fucking did something. Like you proved a point. Way to go, asshole.
Right. So I think for me, a lot of it is, I don't know, emotional, maybe a little bit of resentment toward like how they were acting toward it for a fucking year. So now it's kind of like I can, even though I don't think there's any issue with me walking around in public, you know, without a mask, meeting with other people who've been vaccinated without a mask, even though, you know, I guess I said earlier, like, I don't think it really matters to verify that people are not fully vaccinated because it's mostly their risk at this point. There is like this underlying emotional resentment I have that I can't.
Oh no, I totally agree, and I totally think you should keep it. Again, doing DoorDash. I went to pick up something near a like restaurant that was having outdoor dining, and I saw this couple, and it was like they look like the stereotypical, like, you know, Trump anti-vaxxer type people. And I was just looking at them with like, I think I had a look of disdain on my face. Maybe like if they would have paid attention, they would have saw me just like the glare in my eyes, like, you motherfuckers. Because all I could think was like, you're probably so happy with yourselves right now that you can do this after you probably were one of the ones who were like, fuck this shit. This is horrible to like wear masks. This is the government oppressing me.
Right. That's the ugly thing about it being so fucking politicized and so many people being on board with that shit. Like half the country doing that, half the country constantly going out to these large gatherings, going to like Jericho's concerts and shit. Like, and now that we're in a position where we can start taking them off, it's like there's no like social signal that you could like if I want to go out without my, you know, I'm fully vaccinated. I got my second dose last week or something. Well, I guess I'll be fully vaccinated technically in like a couple of weeks, but you know what I mean? I got both.
Yeah, you're not inoculated yet, sir. So
yeah, but
still, that's why again I still wear my mask and all that shit because I've had it, but I got another week or so before.
I say, you know, skip forward a few weeks, fully inoculated, all that shit, right? And I want to go out like and not wear the mask anymore. Like, there's nothing I can really do to send a signal to people looking at me that like I wasn't one of the one of those motherfuckers who were like, fuck this, I'm not gonna let the government control me, blah blah blah. I was gonna say, except for the fact that I'm not like white, but like there were plenty of black people who had that same sort of attitude.
Oh, absolutely.
So while I do think it was like largely a Trump supporter thing, it wasn't fucking. It was something I saw like across the spectrum.
Yeah.
So, and I can imagine somebody hearing me say this and like, why do you need to send social signals? Like, well, do you exist in the real world? Like, we do that. That's just kind of how humans operate. You do kind of have to do a little virtue signaling when you're around other people. That there's just no good way for me to be like, yeah, unless I put like I got vaccinated sticker on my forehead and just walk around with a dumb grin on my face. Like, there's
get a tattoo, right? Perfect first tattoo right there.
And I hadn't thought about this months ago, but it just pisses me off more about those people's responses to the pandemic, because on top of putting everybody in danger and being assholes, now you're even you're complicating us going back to normal on top of it, because now there's this weird, angry, fucked up resentment that like there's no good way to resolve. Because it's not like, it wasn't a crime, so it's not like they went to prison or got fined or you know what I mean? Like, it was always just kind of guided. So there's nothing really happened to them for doing that.
No.
And maybe somebody would say like it's wrong for me to kind of want some sort of retribution on them. But again, there's this sort of psychological dissatisfaction that comes with them.
That's just life.
Being assholes for a year.
Go back to the Trump thing. Yeah, there is a problem where you can do such fucked up shit and cause so much trouble for others, and you not have some type of, comeuppance for it.
Right. And that's a huge part of the problem with him. Well, a lot of his legal issues, because he's had a shit ton. But I was thinking specifically about the impeachment trials, both of them, because it's like he's not president anymore. We got Biden, blah blah blah. But there is this lingering annoyance over the fact that we just left something unfinished so far. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unresolved. Of course, I'm not saying we should go arrest half the nation, but maybe we should. Maybe then they'll stop being dicks. Who knows?
Why not?
I don't know. I don't know when I'm gonna feel normal about kind of not wearing my mask.
I'm comfortable with keeping it. Honestly, I thought about this the other day. It's like, honestly, I'm actually comfortable with life being the way it is right now. Like, keep 6 feet away at all times, please. Like, somebody got, like, it wasn't even them. They came up, I went to the store today. Or was it yesterday? It was yesterday. I went to the store yesterday, and somebody came behind me with their cart. And their cart was, like, probably 6 to 8 inches away from me. And I felt fucking, like, get the fuck off me. Like, that's how much I'm so used to the social distancing. Like, I don't even want a cart near me. Back up.
I find that interesting, because even with the masks on, and this is what been one of my annoyances too, it's like people were still kind of on me in lines. Like, unless there were, when you go to some places, like there's like physical or like markers on the ground, you know what I mean, to kind of help you figure out like what 6 feet is or whatever. And like when there's those kind of visual markers, people start obeying them more often. But
even then they won't.
Even then, yeah. Like, I've had times where people were like so close to me in line, they were literally standing next to me, like not even behind me anymore. Like, they were standing to my side. So like, this part of the problem. Like even then, like a lot of people still didn't adhere. I don't know. Like, I don't think I want to wear the mask normally, but I do think there's situations where we should just kind of do it, like public transit, for example, buses, planes, trains. Like,
Yeah, especially
situations where you're like
buses. Like,
super close,
God,
packed together.
I thought about that because, like, early in the like pandemic, I tried to work at this place and I couldn't because, like, long story short, they had an outbreak, and that's the only reason I got hired because they needed people because they had an outbreak and they hadn't cleaned the place when they hired me, which shows you what the thinking that people had in the beginning of this shit. But anyway, I had to catch public transportation down there because it was in downtown DC. It was like, it's not really like cost effective to keep driving to downtown DC and trying to find parking and blah blah blah. Maybe I should catch the train. And I was catching the train in the early days of that shit. This was before the mask was mandated and all of that, by the way. And it was like disgusting because it just reminded me of how, because I hadn't caught public transportation in a long time at that point. It just reminded me of how fucking close you are to other human beings in that shit. Like, especially during rush hour. Like, if you've ever been on a bus in a metropolitan area during rush hour or a train in a metropolitan area in rush hour, that is the worst. Like, and yeah, it feels like this should be like something that should be normal. Because, it's icky. Even when you think about it outside of COVID.
Last time I thought about it was going through an airport, and there's like, when the airports are somewhat large, they have those little, I don't know what you call them. They like get you from one terminal to the next, like little things on rails. I don't want to call them trains, but like shuttles, I guess. And everybody's coming off their plane trying to get to the next terminal, so they're like pack into this little fucking sardine can all on top of each other, breathing all over each other. And you look at things like that, and it's like, is it any wonder like a virus like this was able to spread so fucking quickly across the globe? Like, just the way we operate with certain things, like those sort of things. I don't know, maybe you have like a person limit on them, so you can't just pack in 400 people into like a tiny fucking car.
But that's the thing, like, everything has a capacity limit, but people ignore it, and it's not like the businesses are going to actually like have somebody go by and be like, no. Because again, thinking about rush hour on the red line in Washington D.C., like, people will literally pack in. People will squeeze themselves in, knowing that there's barely any room, just to like catch a train and not have to wait another 5 minutes. The trains run every 5 minutes in rush hour, but just so they won't have to wait that 5 minutes. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, so I was thinking I want some of this stuff to be kept, but I think what I really mean is I want some of it to be mandated. Like, I think you should have to wear a mask on planes and what do you call them, trains and buses. You know what I mean? Like, I think that should be a law now. And I know everybody, especially now that we're finally coming out of this mess, you're like, oh my God, he's trying to fucking control us and blah blah blah. But like, I think, again, watching how fast this thing spread, we need to acknowledge that our infrastructure is clearly vulnerable to the spread of viruses like this, and start working to mitigate some of that. But I don't think like a law that says wear a fucking mask on planes and don't breathe all over other fucking people is that aggressive. Like, many plane rides only last a few hours. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Yeah, I could see some negotiations, like, oh, maybe you don't have to wear it like inside the airport or whatever, but it's just like when you're in a plane sitting like right next to fucking strangers from God knows where, carrying God knows what kind of disease.
Just when you are around children, period. Children and their coughing and their diseases and just like touching everything. Like, no, I need a mask around children. I hate to say it that way. It sounds bad, but you guys know how icky children can be because they don't care. Adults will at least some adults care. Children, as a general, don't care at all.
And I don't know how you do a law around it, but like not going into work if you're like sneezing and shit. Like, and that's kind of hard to say because like a lot of people's jobs don't have quite that luxury. But
Yeah,
I want a more health conscious America world, really.
it would
'Cause
be nice, but
I was talking to somebody from work who's, because we've all been kind of locked away for so long, they haven't had like a cold or whatever in like this entire time. And I was like, yeah, it is kind of weird how we just sort of accept that you're going to get sick like fairly frequently.
right.
Like this is sort of this weird resignation to it. It's like as a matter of fact, I don't know, however often you're going to just start sneezing and fucking coughing, maybe throw up or some shit. Like, and when he said that, I was like, I don't think I've had a cold this entire year either.
I mean, doing DoorDash I've had because I have gone out in the elements, but I could see like how people who don't have to leave frequently or at all can avoid that shit.
I mean, even for people who have to still go into like an office, like, because I have a friend who, he does work at a bank, whatever the fuck he does with investments. Like, even he kind of mentioned, like, yeah, I don't get sick as often. I haven't been sick as often as I have been before, during the past year. And I'm like, yeah, this, if we were all a little bit more health conscious, if we had some better fucking laws, we all probably would be sick less often. Like,
I mean, as humans, we have to be interactive and icky, so it's against the law to do otherwise.
I want to see some brave politician push what I just said. Push for masks on planes and trains as a permanent feature. Have some fucking balls. I think I saw somebody say like New York is going to have like no more snow days because virtual learning now. I don't know if that's legit, but like,
Well, that's smart. Like, yo, your kids are sitting at home, like not doing nothing. No, put them in school. That way, you don't have to extend your snow days and like be in school until mid-June. Something you could actually get out of school on time. What a novel idea.
yeah, maybe there's some controversy because I just kind of Googled it. And like the top thing that says no more snow days, not so fast, says NYC Teachers Union. I don't know if it's already passed, but like I do.
I mean, I know why teachers wouldn't want it because like they covet those days off. But it's like, yeah, you like that day off, but don't you like having your full summer? Too? Like there's a trade-off. So it's like what's more important, I guess. I don't know. I can see the pushback.
Even things like that though, just like I never thought about it. Like, yeah, why do you have snow days if you have the fucking internet? Like in Florida, we had hurricanes and that knocked out the power. So that kind of made more sense for us. But like if you still have the ability to connect, like theoretically there's no reason for you to take a day off. And that kind of goes to my point about like staying home because this was a big problem in school too.
No,
People
but
just
again,
come
I
in
still
sneezing and
understand
shit.
it because I mean, teachers for God, like for the love of God, need a break from them little monsters.
Well, they should get better quality breaks, not just whatever the weather grants it to them.
Is there a better quality break for a teacher? Let's be honest.
No, I'm saying it should be part of the system. Like, and I think the fact that we're relying on like an act of God to give them a break is probably a bad sign.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
But yeah, I remember, going to school, like people, I've probably done it too, like sneezing and shit, but like, well, you're not dead, so you got to go to school. It's like, well, would it really have killed you to like be virtual for like 2 days while you fucking work this fucking cold out over the weekend or whatever? Probably not.
Well, then again, like, what happens to the substitute teacher? If a teacher can plug in virtually, then how are we going to get away with shit as kids?
Well, that's these kids' problem.
They're going to be robbed of those like days to act a fool because, the authoritarian's not there.
Well, they're getting it as adults, so.
I mean, all right. I guess we're gonna move on to even more weightier topic. So Israel, something that none of us truly understand and none of us truly have a grasp on, but all of us are up in arms over. So there have been increased back and forth between Israel and the Palestinians. Israel, in particular, dropping mad bombs all over the Gaza Strip. Lots of people have been killed, including children, in this whole thing. And the cry for, I don't know if it's just denouncing or if someone wants some type of like serious intervention. But the cries against Israel have been raised again, and it started the whole debate of whether or not like we should be involved in this whole situation, as well as the polarization of people when it comes to this religiously and politically, as it always is. So, how much do you understand about this whole situation? Not just what's happening currently, but going back, period.
Honestly, I was gonna say like, because we talked about like what topics we touched today, and I was slightly kidding when I mentioned Israel and Palestine, because I was like, I'm not qualified to talk about this at all.
Yeah, and I don't think any of us, and I think that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I feel like there's a lot of opinions going around that aren't necessarily that qualified. And I think a lot of the back and forth tends to lie in that land too, of people who don't truly understand why like they feel the way they feel, but
I'm
are
willing
insistent
to touch it, but like I will qualify it by saying I don't feel that qualified. One and
I
two,
don't want to have a deep
I'll
discussion.
probably
That's why I
be
saved it for last. It's more of a discussion around the discussion around it rather than it itself. Because like me and you were having to talk about all this stuff, and I was telling you about how there was some of the like political or religious things that happened from like the 40s, and Israel being ceded the area and Palestine just disappearing and stuff like that. And then, how it probably goes back to stuff like the Thousand Years' War, just all types of shit. Like, it's been a hotbed since, I guess you could say, since AD started. Like, oddly enough, like, it's just that area has been like craziness, religiously and politically. And none of us truly understand it because, like, one, let's be honest, if we truly, truly did care, we wouldn't be just popping off when something happens. This would be an ongoing conversation about this whole thing. When there was a time where something could be done, nobody did anything. And I'm talking about like decades ago. So to me, it's kind of like I don't know. It's hard to say anything because it's like if you aren't like a stand for it, you're wrong. But if you stand for a certain position, you're wrong. When maybe the best position is just to leave it alone. But people don't want to leave it alone. And now it's become a big issue in like our political realm.
It's this weird thing that people will talk about in whatever context they feel like talking about it. So if people want to talk about it in terms of religion, for example, they'll obviously talk about Jews and Muslims or whatever. But sometimes they want to completely avoid religion and just say this is purely a political land dispute, blah blah blah. And I'm like, it has all those elements to it. It's not like there's this I think, bad tendency to just kind of reduce it down to whatever thing that person kind of wants to talk about. And I think that's part of the reason the discussion around it is so muddy. Because if somebody wants to talk about, what America did wrong in any given situation, because everything's always America's fault, then they'll just kind of hone in on that. If they want to talk about what Israel is doing wrong because they are the more powerful force, they'll hone in on that. If they want to talk about, different factions in Palestine and what they do, like, people are always coming at it from like a fairly acute and specific angle. So I think there's often like a little talking past one another when they want to bring this up. Like they're talking about the conflicts in general, but like touching on different aspects of it and kind of ignoring others. That's one issue. Another, as far as us ignoring it, is I think there's a certain level of discomfort across the board to just not acknowledge it, partially because, it involves Israel, and there's an uncomfortable global history in the treatment of the Jewish people. And at least in America, there is a not great history as far as, looking at people of Middle Eastern descent in general, specifically followers of Islam, as being akin to terrorists, more or less. So I think there's some religious and racial discomforts that kind of make it harder to ignore than, say, whatever you want to think about Crimea and its annexation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the problems why it's like being such a like huge talking point right now in the media, at least. Like I'm sure there are politicians that truly understand it. I don't think there's many that truly understand it, because I think it's like, I could say that I probably identify more with a lot of the more progressive people who talk about it. Whereas like, I see this as an issue of, you should be treating these people this way. All they want to do is just have a place to live. Why can't you find a reason to coexist? Which is simple. It goes back to like, if you want to simplify things, you can. And that's why it's easy to yell at Biden about taking a side and things like that when it comes to this. That being said, I also don't understand like all the deep seated like consequences or the things that are involved in taking such a stance like that, like how it would affect us politically over there. Like, what is it about that whole situation that makes it so hard for people? Like, what are the things that prevent us? Like, what are the exact things? I could break it down again. I could simplify and be like, it must be an oil issue. I don't know. I don't even think Israel provides us oil, but is it an oil issue? Is it that they have enough sway to tell allies in the Middle East to stop giving us? So like, what is this? I don't know the deep-seated reasons. Or is it just a case of you just trying to mind your business in one area, at least one area in the Middle East, since we mind their business and just about everything else? I don't know. I really don't know.
They are our closest ally in the region, and I say ally, but I mean, we were pretty much propping them up for a long fucking time, right? Like, we to this day, we still give them money for military equipment. So it's not like, I guess we could argue that we could just stop doing that completely and whatever, but it is sort of an entanglement, to use somebody else's word there. I don't know that it's that easy to decouple from them, but I think that's also part of what makes an American response to it kind of weird, because it's like, I mean, we can condemn them, carrying out certain strikes, but unless we're gonna take away funding, for example, like unless we're gonna have like consequences, what are we really doing?
Yeah.
Because it's weird for us to condemn them if we're not gonna like be like, all right, we're not gonna give you funding for these fucking missiles or whatever. Like we helped build that fucking missile defense system.
And maybe that's
got,
what
so
some
like,
people want. Like, don't help them at all, and then they feel like that's going to force them to, I guess, acknowledge Palestine as a state. Is that though? Because we've denied aid and stuff from other Middle Eastern countries because we like, oh, you know, Iran's a good example. We fucking sanctioned the fuck out of them and did all these different things, and yet they've still done things in defiance. So is that a good deterrent?
and people having to take these like hard steps, like I think it was Andrew Yang had tweeted something about, in support of Israel or whatever. And I was like, that is not appropriate, right? Like, I don't know. Like I've seen people like having to come out and say like, Israel has a right to defend itself and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, that I don't know that that's really the question here.
Especially since I don't know if you look at the optics of it, it's not necessarily seeming like they're just defending themselves.
Yeah,
more like they're actually punishing these people for like, it's like they're whipping the shit out of a child for asking a question. Optically, like again, it could be something deeper that causes them to react this way. But every day I see Israel bombs them, and I don't see like Palestinians bombed or attacked them. Like, so
I mean, Hamas definitely carries out its attacks, but
that's the thing. That's the Hamas, and that's another thing. It's like I know the Hamas isn't necessarily all of Palestine, so why are we fucking like so? But it's like they are being considered like if the Hamas does it, everybody in Palestine got to suffer. Like, is it that way or?
Wasn't one of those last attacks from Israel essentially based on the claim that Hamas was operating out of some area? And I don't know that we even have evidence that was true. It's like,
right.
So, and this is part of the problem too. It's like, it's like when we were, hunting down our own batch of terrorism across the Middle East. It's like, well, we're not necessarily fighting a country per se. We're fighting a group that resides within several countries. So if we attack in a certain area, it's God. Who could fix this? Fucking Oprah.
She should be president.
She'd have this fixed lickety split.
She just have them get in front of the camera and have a conversation.
But yeah, but like I do think, especially for politicians, there's a sort of need to like virtue signal a bit. So when like Andrew Yang said his shit about, in support of Israel, I was like, I feel like you just feel the need to fucking say this. Like, I don't know why you think this is an appropriate move right now.
Because he's running for government. You know what? I'm going to leave that alone. Poor joke.
I don't know that it helps that much.
I'll tell you the joke after. Poor joke. Some people might know where I was going with the joke, and I don't think I should go there.
But, and then I mentioned like the discomfort we have around, different races and religions from that region, at least in America. I think that's part of it too. It's like you kind of feel the need, especially like, say, for example, support of Israel. Having a concept of a Jewish state. Like there's people who seem to feel the need to project this sort of embrace of them because I guess it's a Jewish state to whatever extent it is. I mean, like it's seen as like, I guess, a good thing that the Jewish people have a nation and it must be celebrated. And even now I feel kind of uncomfortable even like trying to find the wording here because like I feel like if I misspeak a little here, I'm going to step onto a landmine that sounds like anti-Semitism. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and see, that's why it's just like the tying of religious thing is probably the most bothersome thing because is it a religious thing? Only, mind you, again, this is what makes this whole thing topsy-turvy because that area has already been polarized by religion. Again, 1,000 Years War. If you don't like, if you want to look it up, like, you know, the city of Jerusalem has a very storied history when it comes to religious conflict.
I mean, true, but like, yeah, but even talking about them, like,
but it's like, but is this what this is? You know?
I don't know that it's any one thing, but I was just gonna say, like, because even in America, when we talk about, I think we often talk about Israel as if like they're the Jewish side and Palestine is just the Muslim side, as if there's no other representation in either camp. There's like, it's not even that simple in either area either. It's not like, you know, like the presence of Christians in both areas was a thing as well. So it's like, yeah, God. Like every time I want to think about one level of it, I just get fucking distracted by something else, some other factor there.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I guess to your point, it's like it's weird how declarative and like certain a lot of people are when they talk about this. I'm like, bro, I feel like I'm trying to wrap my head around quantum physics or some shit sometimes when this comes up. Even just yesterday, I saw somebody post like a link to some article. It's like the myth that the Middle East situation is complicated. I'm like, I don't think it's a myth, man.
Yeah, it's not that.
Like just that title made me think of all these people who think they're very fucking right all the time.
Right.
And that's why
I mean, I think this is like a problem with Americans too. Like, I hate to put it this way, but like to have the gall to try to say something like that, or to try to feel like you know the answer, the solution. Motherfuckers, what problems have we fixed here permanently? Still have the indigenous people problem. Still have the racial problem. You still have the black people problem. Now you have the Asian assault problem, which has already been something that's happened before, so it never went away. You know, in itself, like, you can't even fix the shit over here. How are you going to dictate to them what should be done?
Especially if you're not going to take a holistic look at that situation. Again, like when I listen to people talk about it, they just kind of hone in on whatever angle and part
Right.
of the conflict they want to talk about. Whether, you know, in this immediate case, for example, whether it be whatever Hamas was doing beforehand, whether it be the Israel counterattack, like, and you know, they want to have this discussion about proportionality of response. Like they're always going to focus on one aspect. Right now, for a lot of people, it's the question of, given how powerful Israel is in comparison to their opponent here, is their response appropriate? I guess that's a worthwhile conversation to have, but like, it is merely one factor in a fucking sea of issues.
Yeah, I mean, the shit is all over the place. And yeah, it's just weird. I don't know. Like, so if you were looking for solutions from us people, sorry, you weren't going to get that.
If Biden wasn't such an asshole, he'd fix it already.
Right, and I hate that idea. It's like, yo, like, I kind of like the idea that he's not said a lot about it, because I feel like that's a smart move. Like, yo, I feel like you can't say the right thing. You know what I mean? No matter what you say, it is not going to be the right thing.
I guess that might be maybe that's a useful political strategy here. But I do think it might be worth having whatever stance you're going to have and just saying it out loud for us all to hear. Because I was listening to somebody make this point the other day. It's like sometimes the United States will like look at an issue and not really talk about it, and then be like, you know, our strategy here is we're going to like, you know, deal with this behind closed doors, you know, quietly with diplomacy and blah blah blah. It's like, well, that's not how people understand. Like we're gonna know Biden's stance when he tells us his stance. Like it's like you kind of need to take some sort of public stand at some point on issues. I get the idea of like, oh, we're more effective behind closed doors. Like, are you? Like, you should be able to like, if you feel that you want to criticize your allies, you should be able to just do that. Or to what extent are they our allies?
But that's the thing, you can't do it publicly, because if you do it publicly, it becomes a big political issue. This is the thing. It's like it's all theater, and that's the problem. That's one of the problems with politics. Like it becomes such a like dramatic, overly dramatic theater, where it's like it's hard to just be able to say like, I think this is wrong, and this should be fixed. Everything has some type of like weight, be it negative or positive, and it's sickening. It's really sickening to be quite honest.
Certainly, because I could see like one world leader maybe having an issue with the actions of another world leader, but if they're allies, you want to have to leave them the ability to save face. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I can see those kind of calculations, but like, I don't think I think they have more consequences than people talk about. Because it also makes it look to the world and your own citizens that you don't have a stance or you're not willing to criticize them. Like for some reason that's inexplicable to them, you won't go at them.
Yeah.
I don't think that works either. Like I don't think the theater works for normal people that much.
Yeah.
It just kind of leaves you confused, especially if you try to argue that like, we're dealing with a diplomacy behind closed doors and we're not seeing any of that in your messaging publicly, then it's just a confusing kind of mixed message then.
Yeah, it's I don't know. So we'll see how this goes, what happens. I guess hopefully it'll quiet down as far as the violence and the loss of life.
I hope in the immediate, but this is kind of the cycle with them, right? Like,
Yeah.
Violence happens, it dies down. Something happens to trigger it again. Here we are all over.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, any suggestions before we leave on this sad note?
I've been listening to this book. It's called The Land of Big Numbers. Who was it? I think it was Sean Hayes on his little podcast. It was called Why Is This Happening? He was talking to somebody, and like in his little preamble, he kind of pointed out that, as Americans, when we think about like China, I think we think more in terms of like the government, essentially, and like, how they relate to people, like whatever control they have over the people and blah, blah, blah. He kind of pointed out that, we don't really absorb media from other countries like that. We don't really know what like the life of like just a regular citizen in China is like. Maybe we have like some imagination of it based on the idea that we have of China being, a controlling regime, but we don't really think about normal Chinese lives. And so like this book is just like a collection of short stories. They're all fiction, but like just short stories taking place in China, essentially, from like different characters' perspectives. I don't know. It's the first bit of fiction I've gone through in a long time, to be honest. I just find it really gripping. Like every short story just kind of fucking has me.
Interesting. It's funny how we rarely think of other countries as people when we talk about them in the news.
His little preamble on that was really what got me to like get the book on Audible, because I was like, that is a good point, because we talk so much about China now, especially, different issues over the last few years. We talk about them as a government and like their control over citizens and messaging and blah, 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 blah. I was like, yeah, I don't really know what like life is like for just a person in China every day. I have no idea. I don't even have like an image in my mind of what it would be like.
Of course you do. It's what the movies tell you, though. That's the thing.
Well, I did watch Crazy Rich Asians last night, so while that took place in Singapore, I think probably the same. Right?
Yeah, that was.
Fuck,
it was Singapore or Hong. It was Hong Kong, I think.
Was it?
I think it's Hong Kong.
Or was there family from Singapore? I don't remember. That little bit turned a little more racist than I meant for it to. My bad.
No, because I mean, it's not being racist. It's just that you just named a like sovereign province of China, which hey, you got Singapore and you got Hong Kong. It could be.
I don't remember where it mostly took place, but I guess my point is that is probably the closest depiction a lot of people have, and it was of super duper rich people. So,
right, it wasn't like normal people.
Like, okay, so I guess real quick
Quote,
as an example, one of the short stories follows this girl who like works in this call center for, I forget what it's called, but it's like this thing the government apparently does. Where they'll just like field complaints from people. Like, maybe an old motherfucker will complain about, something going on in the neighborhood, something with the trees or whatever. Like they might send people out to address it. Like, I don't know if that it's like this. You gotta think of like the government as having this sort of nefarious hand in people's lives, and I guess they kind of do, but they do also seem surprisingly, at least from this depiction, interested in the people's opinion of them. Like the government present is like, it's felt in the characters' lives, but it's not always like super negative either. Sometimes it's just kind of like this thing that gives you these random PSAs.
Yeah, we have really no real understanding of like what it is to be in China, other than how things are shaped and packaged from usually a biased perspective. Or like I said before, really don't understand like what it is to be a person outside of the United States. We just know that you are Russian, so you must be this. You are, Chinese, so it must be this. And so
like if we think of their government as being a dictatorship, I think we just kind of have like a template in our mind of like what being in a dictatorship is like.
Right.
So I think if most of us imagine what it is to be like, in many European countries. Like,
came close.
Sorry?
So we came close.
Yes, we're learning a bit. But yeah, like I think if most people try to imagine what it's like to live in England, they probably imagine it being fairly similar to America, except with like healthcare.
Yes, and no like murders as far as like mass shootings, because they don't have to do the gun thing, things like that.
Right. Whereas if you imagine living in like Russia or China, it's kind of like this black box where you mostly just think of them in terms of, Xi Jinping or Putin.
It's like, oh, it must be the worst thing in the world. It's like, probably isn't as bad as you think it is.
I mean, there definitely was a story of like, I think it's like the first short story with like this student that's like noticing all the fucked up shit the government does, and she tries to spread the word, and they like come and take her away for it. But like, so I don't know. There is definitely like a certain concerning aspect to the government's, place in your life, but it's more than I thought it would be. It's interesting. The stories are fun, short, gripping, emotional. Just gotta follow like the characters are just random fucking people. I don't know. I'm enjoying it. I'm not selling it the best.
Be honest, when you picked it up, you thought it was going to be a kung fu novella, didn't you? You racist American.
I don't know what I thought. I was just kind of convinced by the realization that like, yeah, I have no idea what the fuck like an everyday life is in China. like when he said that, it just kind of took me so aback. I was like, damn, he's kind of right. I have no fucking clue. And worse, I didn't even really notice that I didn't have a clue.
Yeah, most of us don't. That's why you have ignorant motherfuckers who like. I made the joke about you thinking that it was probably a kung fu novella, but we've literally had a fucking president call something kung flu because that's what they think of Asians.
Yeah. I will say I also didn't register that it was fiction at first when I first heard that. I remember going through like the first story. I'm like, all right, this is cool. And then I started going listening to the second short story, and I'm like, hold up, how is this writer getting all this information? Like these people just tell them this much about their lives, and I suddenly click like, oh, these are works of fiction. I'm done.
Yeah, they're not gonna. They can't tell them because
It's like,
they're gonna get
who did you
killed.
fucking find to interview?
They get murdered for stuff like that. I don't like.
Anybody who has like an Audible subscription, if you go to like books on Audible, there's like a little sound where you can click on. I'd say, at least listen to that few second thing. Maybe I'm kind of into it too because I don't go through much fiction nowadays.
That's the person who reads a lot of comic books. Anyway.
Those are short, man. I mean, like proper books that I like buy.
Yeah, different type of fiction.
Yeah, pick them up. Also read X-Men, which if you guys haven't been listening to me say that for the past year, you've kind of fucked yourself because there's a lot, but I still say read all of it. That is all. Do it.
Yeah, do that. Get yourself psyched up for when they show up in Loki.
Jesus.
Somebody's out there spreading that rumor. Anyway.
I'm not going to be fucking ready for what Twitter is like the second the X-Men are even referenced. I'm not ready.
Oh, man. That's going to be wild. Anyway. As always, by the way, I lied again. I said short, and I swear we've been here for about 3 hours. God damn it. Anyway, thank you guys again for listening, watching. I'll keep you posted and updated on the stuff I was rambling about when he was fixing his headphones. And yeah, I think that's it. All right, everybody, take care. Have a good one, and see you next time on the Reason Reborn. Peace.
Jesus.